Professor Raimon PANIKKAR werd geboren in 1918. Zijn vader kwam uit India, zijn moeder uit Spanje. Maar PANIKKAR beschouwt zichzelf als volbloed Indiër en een volbloed Spanjaard. PANIKKAR werd priester gewijd in 1946. Hij is dokter in de filosofie, de theologie en de natuurwetenschappen. En hij schreef meer dan 40 boeken. Hij doceerde aan universiteiten in India, Rome en Amerika. Raimon PANIKKAR leeft nu in een klein dorp aan de rand van de Pyreneeën.
How did you live these two cultures from the beginning? How did you feel?
Well, I didn't ask anything. The best things in life are always given to us. And wisdom consists in accepting things and transforming them by loving them. And then it's a process of transformation. So I didn't ask.
You studied science, chemistry, philosophy and theology.
Yes, well, which is, again, it was not pre-planned, not pre-programmed, not set in any software, but it came down. My father had a chemical factory. So I was the eldest of the family. I was just sufficiently clever to study science or humanities or anything. So I always hesitate because I don't make any decision in my life. That's what people don't understand.
You don't make decisions? No. How do things
because I'm silly,
happen to you?
Probably, or stupid. I don't make decisions. And even for small little decisions, are you going to think that is to me a difficult thing. Because if I want to make the intellect, I know 10,000 reasons for and 10,000 reasons against. So what I'm going to do, let things happen according to your heart or instinct or whatever. The difficulty is that if your heart is not pure, then you may take the wrong decision. So my family had this chemical factory. It was normal. And they didn't oblige me. But being good enough in both science and humanities, said, well, study science, which I do not regret. 7 long years to get in touch with matter, to know matter intimately. I had always interest in studying more than that, not less. And so studied philosophy.
How did you come to study philosophy then?
Well, because of that kind of friend of mine, if you want. I was asking always, all the time, the wrong questions for the chemist. And I had always interest. In philosophy, as I understand philosophy, which is not just playing football with concepts, but trying to discover by all the means you have at hand the meaning of your life. What is all that about? So asking, I said the wrong questions or asking the right questions. And then you discover that many other people have thought about these things before you. And so you come to know the wisdom of the elders, of the ancestors. And that is another way of saying philosophy. Once you are in the grill of the professional philosophers, they put you more or less things, but they study us 3 times or 4.
And did this study lead you to theology?
Again, the same thing.
Matter, again, ask the wrong questions.
Matter leads me to the spirit leads me to theology. Because philosophy without theology is simply wrong or just handicapped. All the fundamental questions are theological questions. The Western mind got obsessed by certainty.
By reason?
By certainty. I want to be sure. And from certainty, you got to security. And from Descartes' certainty, you got to the state security that unless I have an atomic bomb, I cannot be secure. It's a whole process. And theology has been then specialized. And theology without philosophy, what is that? A kind of red line with the divine, which is superstition.
About this security, you say somewhere that religion always has to have this sense of insecurity and doubt, that this is...
Unless you are so full of the thinking that you are the master of yourself, the creator of the world, the super dictator of the entire thing, that you can walk on life. I think we lack much more, I would say now, a feminine dimension of accepting things, of being marvelous at things, of falling in love. You know that I make this pun. Philosophy is much more the wisdom of love than the love of wisdom. And both need to go together. Because knowledge without love is simply calculus, and cuts and destroys you. And love without knowledge is simply sentimentalism. And you are then, after a while, totally disenchanted and doesn't last. To bring the two together, or rather, more than to bring it together, to discover that within me there is no separation. And precisely enlightenment has separated the both. And that has led even to modern science, for instance, which make us believe that one can know without loving. That you can be a great scientist being a crooked person and a rascal, which is not the case through knowledge. We have disentangled again ethics from metaphysics, from religion. And ethics means to follow certain. And I fully understand people react against. We are free. I mean, that is the greatest human dignity, freedom.
Aren't there dangers too in this freedom?
Obviously.
So
The greatest danger is life. You will die. More than that. The greatest danger is abuse of freedom, indeed.
yes, I remember that somebody saying that a lot of people can't stand freedom, and that they are just willing to give it away, and that somebody else tells them what to do. Can we handle our freedom as human beings?
Well, we can, but first, for those people in power, it's uncomfortable. Why now in Spain, for instance, they try, and all over Europe the same thing, to avoid the study of philosophy and even to dismiss it from the second
Curriculum.
curriculum.
But is it done consciously?
I am very much afraid, and I suspect that is done consciously. We want robots, not people who think, who can question our questions, and then the powers that be from multinational, from economic powers, etc., will embarrass us, indeed. I don't believe any longer in the kind of innocence. Isn't the trend
No?
of the... No.
But isn't it that people like to study economics, want to have a career, and therefore they're not interested in philosophy? Isn't that the reason you turn it around?
I turn it around completely, because we are being manipulated. You know, the second industry, I mean, our present situation is intrinsically unjust. Where does the world spend more money? Arms. Second, propaganda. Third, tourism. These are the three biggest money markets. We call it defense, of course. Because we are with this obsession of security. If I'm not more powerful than you, I will feel threatened. And when Bacon began to say that knowledge is power, then we develop that something which is not knowledge, but something which gives power. Salary is the modern form of slavery, because they give you at the end of the month a check with which you can do anything. But meanwhile, 5 days of the week, the 8 hours of the day, you work for me and whatever, don't ask. And if you like it or don't like it, doesn't matter. And if you do something which doesn't come out of your being, which you don't like, then obviously depression, an ulcer at 45 years, a divorce after 5 years, because your nerves are, you live on edge, etc., etc. And then you take a pill, another thing, etc., etc. And we create this artificious world in which we live.
Are you suggesting that the study of philosophy and theology is dangerous then?
Indeed, indeed. Threatens the status quo, asks the embarrassing questions, demolishes and undermines the certainties, asking wrong whys, and wants to get your own freedom. And we prefer just cattle. Obedience, which is the opposite. You obey. What means obedience? The very word means the wisdom of the word. Obedience means audire, means to listen. To listen to whom? To you? Or to listen to the voice of my conscience, or the language of the birds, or to listen to what the sky and the stars tell me. But we are illiterate. The old scholastics already said that the first book is the book of nature. The second book, said the Christians, is the Bible. And the third book is that what people that we write, what the authors write. And that's interesting thing, uninteresting. But we are illiterate. I mean, we have lost the awareness of the dignity of the person. Because if I kill you, I wound myself also. If you disturb me, is that I am also disturbed. And I disturb you. It is this interrelationship of everything with everything. From the stars to God, to the divine, and the body and soul. And then you begin to discover that you are not the proprietor of your being. That you live. Because you live because you have been invited to the banquet of life. For time being, all right, for the beginning time. And you enjoy it. That this implies discipline, hassles, all the better. Because these are little obstacles which allow you to realize yourself. The old Kant, I mean, I'm not against philosophers also, says this beautiful image. If the doves could think, they will curse the air which offers resistance to their wings. And without that, they will not fly. So, but we are perhaps as stupid as the doves, just cursing the resistances, which are the very means by which we can fly. We can realize ourselves. Western fundamentalism is much more dangerous because more intelligent and more powerful than all the other fundamentalisms which we criticize, and I criticize.
What do you mean by Western fundamentalism?
The conviction that our dogmas, like democracy, World Bank, common market, nation states, technology, science, are the things, and non-negotiable. That's a more subtle fundamentalism, that our foundations, because it's more dangerous, more subtle, and better in a certain way, indeed, than a silly fundamentalism of fanatic, whoever.
And nevertheless, why do you call these, for instance, democracy? Well, why do you...
Yes, democracy can be fundamentalism. And in the name of democracy have been made as many crimes as in the name of God.
So everything which has no reflective power, is that it? Do you call that fundamentalism?
Everything which is an absolute, which is a non-negotiable thing, which is something which, and I have to respect that you have your foundations. But you have also to respect that I have other type of foundations. That's the meaning of pluralism.
Well, I think you've half answered the letter. It's time to pass the baton from Tessa Bielecki.
Thank you, dear
We're in
friend and a
Canada.
great person.
And she wrote a question for you.
Which I may read.
Yes.
A question of Mother Bielecki. I repeat it. A dear friend.
Dear Father Raimon, I know that you're critical of the institutional church, as I am myself, but isn't the institutional element an integral part of religion, as Baron von Hugel said? So how can we do without it? And what would a reformed or a transformed institutional church look like?
Would a reformed
Or transformed.
or a reformed or transformed institution look like? Well, if this question merits an answer. Organism and organization. You are an organism. If I pinch your finger, well, your brains react. If I say a nice word, even you smile. If something, you are an organism in which everything is connected. And as I was saying before, without elaborating much, when we spoke of the body and soul, the organism is the unity within everything which is organically connected, even with the soul. And I feel that I have to lift up my arm, and I lift it up. By just because it's an organism. An organism needs life, needs a soul, if you want. An organization needs a constitution, a board of directors, and money. And there is this danger to convert the organism, which is a living thing. A plant is an organism. The cosmos is the earth is an organism. The cosmos is an organism. The entire world is an organism. The entire universe into an organization. An organization has not a life of its own. Has to justify, because we create money, health, or promote tourism, or whatever it is. Has to have a constitution, a board of directors, and money. Well, or means to realize it. Mm-hmm. And here begins the degeneration of living organisms, like the church, for instance. The church is a living organism. And even if you had those books of theology, which you said I studied, they say the soul of the church is the Holy Spirit. The head of the church, even of the Catholic Church, is not the Pope. Please. That knows everybody, I suppose, today.
It's the Holy Spirit.
Is Christ. And the soul is the Spirit. That Spirit, which we are still in the Pentecost week, permeates everything. In everything. Everything is divine, everything is spiritual, everything is the Holy Spirit. In different ways, indeed. Like the Trinity, the three are one and not one, and infinitely different, or infinitely different. So the institutions have a life of their own. The church is an institution, and has to be an institution, and needs to be an institution. Does not need to be an organization. It's an organism, a living organism. But the trouble, let me put it this way, the trouble lies by us. If I worship the church as more than an institution, then I am wrong. I had a friend of mine, the old Spanish cavalier general in the army. To me, the army now is obsolete. The army is one of the worst things in the world, etc., etc. Yet, that was a real gentleman. and full of enthusiasm for the army in the still traditional cavaleresque sense of what means to be a cavalier. And he said, or said to me when speaking, you see, the trouble with the army, the trouble with the military, is that we need to recruit from the civils. The trouble with the church is that it has to recruit the people from these silly fellows who worship the church as an institution where an absolute. So it is easy to criticize the others. If you take the church is an institution, indeed, and it's nice even. But if you think that the institution is the thing, who is to blame? A little the institution, but is to blame us. Don't take the institution, I should say, too seriously, but seriously, take it as it is. Ways of traffic, or loss of traffic, or loss of organizing things, which is needed. I mean, anarchy leads nowhere. Chaos is the mutual destruction. But if we begin to think, and Christians should know very well, that the Sabbath is made for man and man for the Sabbath, that the freedom of the children of God means the freedom of the children of God means freedom, and not just blind discipline. You see, if I criticize the power of the clergy or bishops, which I do, there's one way to rent on all aspects the power powerless.
That is?
That is not recognizing it. I frighten you. And, yes. If you kill me, you send me to hell, whatever it is. If I am not frightened, all your power on me is gone. You can menace me, you can torture, but if I am not frightened, what is your power? So if we are not afraid, and once again, what that risen man said, in all reported manifestations of the risen Christ, except one, his greetings, two. Only two things are his message. Peace be with you, and don't be afraid. And the whole revolution of Christ was that he dared to challenge the very essence of his own tradition, the law, the Torah. I'm convinced, more and more convinced, that when the Jews, the Sanhedrin, condemned Jesus, it was not because the Jews were bad. It was not because they were ambitious and bad fellows, these bad Jews. On the opposite. They want to save that man who was non-violent, who was so tolerant, the zealots and the non-zealots and the right and the left and the adulterers and everybody. Only one thing he could not tolerate. Only one thing. Hypocrisy. All the rest. Hypocrisy, not because it destroys itself. Be what you are, you see. I'm not what I am. I am just putting off and putting on. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say to my Tessa.
You say that the crisis we are in is not the crisis of any particular civilization, but that's more in general. What do you mean by that?
Yes. Precisely because I am an optimist, and I believe that our times, not because are our times, although it happens that we live in them, have a very important role to play and a function to perform, because we have reached geographically, historically, the limits of the earth. And in a certain way, we have a certain possibility of seeing the entire planet, I think that the challenge of our times is not whether the next American president is going to be Democrat or Republican, or the European Union is going to have the euro, or Japan is going to beat the dragons of Asia, Hong Kong or Singapore. But precisely because our present day is different from all the others, literature, philosophy, wisdom have existed since thousands of years, but that we fly at 1,000 kilometers per hour or speak in a minute or and say nothing with somebody who is not here, etc., etc. I think that the challenge of our present day culture, times, is to learn, to gather, to synthesize, and to learn the last 6,000 to 8,000 years of human history. The historical period. Before we call it prehistory. And the historical period is characterized by this worship of time.
Of time.
Time, and of linear time. We have to work for the future. Young man, you have to think in your future. You citizens, we have to create great England, Spain, whatever. The idea of the empire is to, for the future, and the new generations, and the youth, and education are going to have a better future, a brighter future. It's living for the future.
So what do you suggest?
Yes. Living for the future has a violent seed, a bellicose ignition point, because for the future the most horrible things have been made in the history. But our task is to pass from a culture of war to a culture of peace. A culture of war means that I'm right, you're wrong, and we are the conquerors, the victors, which have written the history. Hammurabi and all the times is always the victor against the foe. A culture of war. I have written even we use our language as a weapon to convince you, to defeat you. So we are beginning to become aware that this way of beating the other, being better than the other, exporting more than importing, being richer than you, etc., has its limits and does not deliver the goods. The goods of a good life, of a peaceful existence, of real progress, if you want, the very word progress betrays progress. Where are you going to? Time is not an arrow. Not even a circle. And more people are beginning to discover that neither riches, nor a great empire, nor a great civilization, knowledge, makes us more human and happier. Never in the world has had so much suffering and oppression and man-made injustices as now. That we have all means, to alleviate the hunger, to alleviate the... And they want to do it. Because the people in power are monsters? No. Because that civilization, that system, that culture, that myth makes it impossible.
So we need a new picture of the world.
Well, we need to destroy all pictures and have the guts to act without a model.
What is the role of the church or religion in the 21st century?
I have a whole theory, which I have even written down, that Christendom is practically dead, Christianity is dying, and Christianness is emerging. Christendom was a genial conception of the totality of human being. Christian culture, Christian cathedrals, Christian right, Christian law, Christian prisons, Christian inquisitions, Christian crusades, Christian wars, good, bad, Christian culture. Christendom, which is this genial conception, which made Europe, is practically dead, except in the minds of few people. And Christianness is emerging. You speak to young generations of the Council of Chalcedon, of the dogma of even the most of the Christian dogmas. They may hear you, but the body of Christians is becoming more and more conscious that the mission of Christ was not a big institution, was not to control and to administrate, not even sacraments, but to be a living symbol of something which speaks from within your heart, and that if there is any law, that's written in your heart and not in any document.
So I really should thank you for pointing us to the most important thing, namely that is love.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.